Iberia was once a very powerful nation in the southernmost region of Terra, unmatched when it came to exploring the seas. They lived prosperously for decades, and at the height of their golden age, the country would come together to work on their biggest project yet: the construction of the greatest and most powerful ship ever conceived by human mind, the Stultifera Navis. The most reputable Iberian laureates, the best engineers, scientists, philosophers, and mariners would brave the seas and board the most powerful naval vessel ever built. An expeditionary campaign on a scale unlike anything before. That dreadnought would be the epitome of human will and ingenuity. The only problem is that the seas of Iberia were treacherous not due to the weather, but because of the things that lived beneath the surface. Countless lives had been lost to the monsters under the waves. The deaths became more frequent, and the Iberian authorities began to worry. The Stultifera Navis had been at sea for a few years when the catastrophe known as the Great Silence fell upon Iberia. A massive tsunami struck the coast, destroying countless cities and ports, and soon after, the sea monsters roamed the shores to take care of whatever was left. Communication was lost with every last ship at sea, and the once great nation of Iberia was launched into a dark age. In the shores, there was nothing but the cold waves crashing against the grey rocks, and silence. 60 years later, the Stultifera Navis reappeared on the radar without explanation, having seemingly stayed afloat for this entire time. With the hopes of reclaiming the technology and knowledge lost at sea so many years ago, the Iberian government sent a group of inquisitors to track down and bring back the ship. My friends, if the story that I told you interested you in the slightest, would you believe me if I told you that this is one subplot of one of 23 different countries in this game? As it turns out, it's kinda hard to make a cool intro sequence when your gameplay looks like this. No, but I promise this game goes hard. This is Arknights. I know it doesn't look like the most dynamic gameplay you've ever seen, but would you believe me if I told you that this Plants vs Zombies clone has some of the most massive, detailed, and captivating world building you'll ever see? Seriously, if you know Arknights, I dare you to come up with one intellectual property that has more lore than this game. Jesus Christ, I said one! Whatever, my point is that the devs somehow managed to create a world that houses almost every single setting for a story that you can conceive of. And I can only hope that in this video I'll make a good enough job of presenting to you just a fraction of this amazing world building job they did. Arknights is a tower defense game where your objective is to commit genocide against sick people, to protect and aid a group of people known as the Infected. You see, Arknights is set in the world of Terra, and that is an objectively horrible place to live. This map only shows a part of it because people are literally too scared to go too far north or too far south on account of the unspeakable eldritch horrors that inhabit those areas. Terra has one peculiarity about it, that being that natural catastrophes are extremely common and extremely devastating to the point that people had to adapt by building mobile cities, which is essentially a city with its districts built on top of massive vehicles capable of moving out of the way whenever someone predicts that a catastrophe will occur. Now, if you're anything like me, the first thing that will come to your mind will be, oh, that kind of sounds like Mortal Engines. And the second thing that will come to your mind will be, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Do you know how much a city weighs? Like a fucking ton. Something like a few dozen trillion tons, in fact. Do you know how much energy is needed to make something like that move at a speed of like 3 miles per hour? I don't know, because it breaks my calculator. It's the equivalent of 50 trillion Oppenheimer breakfast specials. Thankfully, Terra has a solution for this. For as much devastation that the catastrophes leave in their wake, they are also very merciful to leave even more. After the whole shitstorm subsides, the catastrophe sites are usually left with a special mineral called originium, which is an extremely energy-dense black crystal. The mineral is thought to be the cause of the catastrophes, and if you analyze the semantics, it kind of makes sense. It's literally called origin rock. Anyway, this originium is the only and main fuel source that powers all the civilizations in Terra, except for the fish people. It allows for everything, from machines to cars to guns. So far it sounds pretty good, until you realize that this originium shit is worse than plutonium. Originium has this weird and quirky property where if it gets anywhere near your bloodstream, it will start growing on your body like a cancer. And after a sufficiently long amount of time, it has a 100% mortality rate. This condition is known as oropathy, and a good half of the characters that you'll meet will be suffering from it in some capacity, some better and some worse. But even though Oripathy will eventually kill you, it allows you to cast magic with your hands. And yeah, there is magic in this world, it's called arts. Individuals infected with Oripathy will suffer from a great deal of prejudice in many parts of the globe. Some places will accept them, but the majority of the nations will either ignore their basic needs, shun them, enslave them, and sometimes even kill them. Though you don't necessarily have to be infected for that, because as it turns out, there is racism in the Cute Waifu game. Because of the mistreatment of these people who simply want to enjoy a calm and peaceful few last years of their lives, a group of infected individuals decided to form the Reunion movement, with the objective of creating a safe environment for all of them to live. And they are the bad guys. I know that sounds bad, but as it turns out, being mistreated over and over again everywhere you go does have a tendency of getting people a little bit quirky with their war crimes, especially when said people have the capacity of setting you on fire with their mind. The great majority of the enemies you'll fight, at least in the first 8 chapters of the story, will be from this Reunion movement. The only difference is that they're ontologically evil, so every horrendous thing you commit against them is morally justified. Oh, and by the way, you're one of the leaders of Rhodes Island, a pharmaceutical company that employs a small army. Your goal is to allegedly bring peace between the infected and the non-infected, while as well trying to research a cure for Oripathy. Okay, but that was just me setting the scene. Let's actually get to the stories of this game. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, the main story is kinda boring, at least the first 3 chapters, and unfortunately the anime adaptation doesn't really escape this either, even if it looks really pretty. If you're just curious about this, or you decided to play the game, or if you're already one of the players, a far more digestible way to enjoy the lore would be through either one of these channels. But in case you actually enjoy reading these very extensive visual novel segments between each level, I can guarantee that some moments in the story go really hard. But in Arknights, when it comes to storytelling, the name of the game is the events, and when it comes to the events, the name of the game is diversity, because the range of scenarios that they explore is the literary equivalent of a fragmentation grenade. Here are just a few examples. We have Mafia, Gangsters, Prison Break, Firefest, Bloodborne, the Bloodborne DLC, NFL, China, Brazil, and in the future we'll be going to the moon. No, but for real, the events are the parts that get me most excited because they give us glimpses of the world of Terra. Some can be pretty fun and lighthearted, and some can be really fucked up, but they always have an interesting story to tell. I think I'm biased to say that I love this world so much because it seamlessly mixes 3 of my favorite genres and tropes of fiction, those being medieval dark fantasy with sci-fi futuristic shit with cosmic horror. This game has Cthulhu, it has drones, it has power armor, and yet people still fight with swords and crossbows because you can't use guns unless you're rich or from the Vatican. Speaking of which, we've seen the diversity of the events, but that diversity stems from 2 main things, the cream of the crop and also the reason why I'm making this video in the first place. Those would be the characters and the nations. I swear, this game has everything. It has Geralt of Rivia, it has Belle Delphine, it has Lady Maria. The cast is absolutely insane, but you know what? I am not going to talk about them. Of course the characters are cool, it's a gacha game, that's how they make money. I want to talk about the stories and the nations. I gave you an example at the start of the video, so let me give you a few more. In the Integrated Strategies game mode, which is essentially a roguelite, one of the types of gameplay options you have is the Crimson Solitaire, which has you exploring an old abandoned castle in search of one of your operators, a skilled assassin by the codename Phantom. As you thread to the derelict ruins of this palace, you start to find the weirdest and most out-of-place encounters. You find a guy trapped inside a coffin asking for your help. You find a strange girl chained to a pillar asking to be unshackled. You find people in a ballroom dancing madly until the skin of their feet fall off. And you find a duck. The other gameplay option in Integrated Strategies is Mizuki and the Kairula Harbor, which has you exploring the Iberian coast with the objective of researching the seaborne creatures as the world slowly starts to succumb to an oceanic apocalypse. In another event known as Dorothy's Vision, you try to uncover the truth behind a set of unethical experiments a corporation known as Rhine Labs is conducting in a group of innocent people. You find a bunch of scientists and guys in power armor. And in yet another event, you go visit one of your operator's hometown in the Sargonian rainforest, only to have your aircraft be shot down and you have to fight your way through the local tribes as they beat your techno-magical ass with sticks and stones. And in that same event, one of your operators trips balls on some shrooms she found on the ground, and her hallucinations are another event. Bro, have you ever seen another game that puts you through this wide a range of scenarios when it comes to its story? Obviously, you can't explore the world at large because you're restricted to this glorified chessboard, but you get to see what the world is like through these stories, and Jesus Christ, is there a lot of story in this game. The word count for some events number in the hundreds of thousands. But yeah, every setting and every genre you can conceive of, this game has it. And bro, don't even get me started on the OST, just listen to the shit. I'm not someone who typically gets emotional when playing games, but there is one moment, one specific level in Chapter 8, if you know you know, that playing that level genuinely gave me goosebumps. And just as a reminder, this is the gameplay that we're working with. Dude, that's basically it. This video didn't have a lot of structure because I just wanted to talk about this world. I sort of wish there was more media related to Arknights. There is a lot actually, but I don't know, an RPG campaign sounds like it would be really dope. But yeah, that's basically it. Wait, I didn't even introduce you to my wives! Okay, now that that's done, let me go check my analytics real quick. Let's see. What the fuck?